Welcome back, everyone, to the pregame show from Emporia, Kansas, as Hayes High gets set to take on Aquinas for the 5A state championship. And we're now pleased to be joined by a man that you might have heard of before. He's sitting right across from us, the voice of the Hayes High Indians on 96.9 KFIX, Dustin Armbruster. Dustin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. It's kind of a wild mix of emotions to be a part of this after doing Hayes High for so long and finally getting to be part of a state championship broadcast.
Yeah, I'm ready for the game to get started, but we've seen it all this postseason, from multiple shutouts to knocking off the number 1 seed to playing now 5 straight weeks on the road. It's really been fun to watch this Hayes High team, and now they have an opportunity to bring home the school's first state championship.
Yeah, it really is, and what's been so neat about it is all the hurdles that they've had to jump over. You mentioned the 5 straight weeks on the road and being the underdog in every one of them. I don't know that Hayes High was chosen outside of maybe you and I and a few Hayes people thought, oh yeah, Hayes can go win this game. They were certainly not chosen by most of the people around the state of Kansas to win each of their games, and yet they just still find ways to do, especially last week with all of the injuries. What they've overcome physically, mentally, emotionally is maybe the best part of this entire postseason so far.
Yeah, tonight it won't be easy for them to bring home the championship, though. They'll face the state's number 1 ranked team for the second time this year, as they started it with Derby, and now they end it with the defending 4A state champions, St. Thomas Aquinas Saints. A big challenge tonight for the Hayes High Indians, but they bring a lot to the table as well for the championship matchup.
Yeah, they do. And the biggest thing that Hayes brings to it maybe is a little bit of being naive to the situation. You know, St. Thomas Aquinas has been there before. The pressure is certainly on them. As you mentioned, they're the number 1 ranked team. They're undefeated. Hayes High's never been here before, and that's either a good thing or a bad thing. It can be a bad thing because maybe you don't take the moment as serious as you should, but it can be a good thing to be naive, and Hayes High might roll into this thing not knowing they shouldn't win the game and just go do it anyway. And so being a bit naive to the situation is not always a bad thing.
Indeed, and people will focus on tonight's matchup between the players on the field, but how about this coaching matchup? You have Tony Crow, who was able to rebuild Hayes High football after Randall Rath left in 2017, and he's been able to take this team to heights never seen before with Hayes High football. But on the opposite sideline, Aquinas is led by one of the best in the business, Randy Dreiling. He took over the program in 2014 after the Saints had 5 seasons with Mike Thomas. Coach Dreiling spent 17 seasons with Hutchinson before leaving for Aquinas, and he had great success with the Salt Hawks as he helped them to a 160-38 record, 11 seasons with 10 or more wins, 3 undefeated seasons as well, and 7 state championships. And now he has 2 state titles with Aquinas, including one last year in Class 4A.
Yes, Randy's one of the best. Victoria native, so there's an Ellis County tie in this game among just the Hayes High people that might know Randy. And he's such a good coach because of the details that he puts into his game plans and what he requires out of his kids and out of his assistant coaches as well. And so there's a very high level of expectation from Coach Dreiling that he puts on his team. But with that, you see what he's able to do with that flex bone offense. Nobody runs that very much, and certainly not to the success level that he has out in the Eastern Kansas League. And so that tells you how good this team is at all of the little things. They're not trying to trick anybody very often. It's pretty much straight ahead. Little sleight of hand on who have the football, but Randy Dreiling's one of the absolute best, and Hayes High is going to have to go take this thing because Randy Dreiling's not giving out any favors in tonight's game.
Absolutely, and Hayes High is going up against a great defense, against some players that were Eastern Kansas League selections a year ago, which is a very tough conference with Blue Valley schools and Bishop Miege in there as well, who just played right before this game. But the offensive options might be limited for Hayes High. So as you've watched practice, what can Hayes High do to add to their run game that they'll likely use on almost all their plays?
Well, the one thing that they'll probably do, and they did this last week, was they added Will Clark as a second tight end on the opposite side of Parker McGuire. And now they were able to work in a few more plays with Will in there. You know, it's not like Will wasn't at practice, but he wasn't always on the practice field. And so there's a few more technique tips that they'll be using with Will, a few more ways that they're going to block with him. But now Ian and also Ian McGuire and also Holden Lynn are going to know a little bit more of what's in front of them, because before it was just a mismatch of players everywhere on the field, and you just find a hole. And so they're going to know a little bit more, but there's going to be a passing element in this game. I don't know how often Hayes High is going to go to it, but they are going to trust Ian McGuire at some point to throw this football. And I think that's going to be the big thing, is how long will St. Thomas Aquinas be worried about Ian throwing the football before they overcommit, thinking he's not going to, and then can the Indians take advantage? And so that's the biggest thing added this week, is some passes by Ian McGuire, something that he's not he's not used to. He's a baseball player. He knows how to throw a ball, but throwing the pigskin's a little different, especially in a state championship game. The good thing is Ian is one of the most unflappable guys that you're ever going to be around.
But now when you look at Hayes High's defense, here's an interesting stat that I found. They ranked top 4 in points allowed this postseason for the 18 teams playing this weekend, and they also held their first 3 opponents to season lows with yardage, where it was rushing yards with Andover and Hutchinson and passing yards and total yards against Great Bend. This might be what will bring a championship home for Hayes High.
Yeah, that's what's going to have to be better than anything else on the field, is that Hayes High's defense has been so good. And you mentioned a couple of those teams with Andover and Hutchinson. They run the flex bone. Now, a little different variety, and when you're going against a defending state champion, Randy Dreiling coach team, you know it's going to be the best of the best. But Hayes High has seen it on a couple of occasions already, which benefits them. However, Randy Dreiling and St. Thomas Aquinas has seen how Hayes High lines up against the flex bone. They're going to adjust as well. The first drive of the game for both of these teams, I don't think, is going to be indicative of how the whole game's going to go because of the amount of adjustments that is going to be made. But I really think Hayes High's defense has surprised a lot of people in how dominant they've been in the postseason. They're going to need to be close to that level again tonight to win a championship.
And my final thing I want to talk about, since I won't be wearing the headset for Tribe Broadcasting next year, Hayes High fans have a lot to look forward to next year. 8 starters returning on offense, 7 on defense, and regardless of what happens tonight, while the players want to bring home that state title, it really shows the culture that has been established with the Hayes High football program. A big opportunity tonight, but a lot to look forward to with the future of the program.
Yeah, whatever happens tonight is not going to weigh too big or too small on the future of the program because of what has been built. You mentioned all the starters that are coming back, most notably the offensive line. The entire offensive line comes back next year, and they are the engine that makes this offense move. And so that offensive line is going to what paves the way. Of course, Holden Lind, but he runs behind that massive offensive line. Your brother Gus is one of the small guys on the line, and he's not small. He's not a small guy, and so that tells you kind of where this offense will be operating next year. But what this team has done with no real stars on it is pretty amazing. And I think that is what shows all the younger guys that didn't get time this year, guys that are going to be coming up in the junior high, that you don't have to be a 5-star to be a stud at Hayes High and contend for state titles. What this program did was put another notch on the belt of what's possible in Hayes High football. There's only one notch left, and that's to win the whole thing. But what Hayes High has done this year has helped propel the program forward well beyond this year, as you mentioned, next year. But even the guys, the little kids that are in the junior high, they're going to be looking at this team going, we can do that. We have an opportunity to go now. And so this team has done so much for Hayes High football.
All right, Dustin, thank you so much for joining. Have a good call tonight, and hopefully when we talk again, Hayes High will be state champions.
You too, Hank.